Hey everyone, and welcome to part 2B of the vertical vivarium conversion mini-series. In this demonstration I will show you how to create another naturalistic vivarium background that is quick and easy to make. Unlike the waiting time that comes with other methods, you have instant results with this particular method. Another benefit with this background is that it's not very messy to make and it's pretty cheap. I want to also throw in the reminder that this background can be used on any size setup and that it could be used in conjunction with other background methods in the same enclosure. To begin, let's measure the setup to determine at what size we'll cut the foam. To do this, measure the width of the tank between the side panes of glass, not the entire width. Next, measure the height of the tank to determine how tall you want the background to be. I like mine to be about 4 inches shorter than the full height of the enclosure. Once you've got your measurements, use a roller and marker to mark up your styrofoam. Now we will cut the foam to the proper height. You could use a multitude of methods to do this, but I'm just using an X-Acto knife for this part. I don't usually cut foam in this way because of the mess it makes. Here's what I prefer to use. It's called a versatile. It can solder, brand wood, and even cut foam with a hot knife attachment. Similarly, you could use a tool specifically designed for cutting foam. The benefit to using something like this is that you have little to no mess when working with foam. Anyways, let's roll out the Coco fiber mat. The mat has some thickness to it, roughly about 3/16 of an inch. We will have to account for this thickness when cutting our foam to the correct width. I determined that roughly 3/8 of an inch needed to be removed in addition to the original measurement. After getting the foam remeasured, cut it to size. Now, put a piece of cocoa husk mat on either side of the foam and see how it fits. Ideally, this will fit snugly, but you shouldn't have to force it in place. You might be thinking, why not simply cover the back of the enclosure with a flat piece of cocoa fiber mat, or cover the foam as is? Of course you could do this, but we want a background with a little definition to it. That said, let's sketch up some areas on the foam that will create a sort of topography. Using your scrap foam, cut out some pieces that roughly match up with what you have sketched. I carved mine out with the versatile to have some additional definition. Although you don't have to do this, it will help the cocoa fiber mat create a more natural looking slope. Now that we have our additional pieces of foam cut and carved to shape, let's attach them to the main structure. We will do this using some toothpicks and hot glue foam sticks. You could use silicone for this process, but personally, I like to use hot glue. Obviously, it cures much faster, but it also seems to work much better. Equally, it is non-toxic once cured. Anyways, get one of your pieces of foam and trace its shape onto the main structure. Then break some of the toothpicks and poke them into the main piece of foam. These will add a sort of armature that will help keep the foam secure. Then get your hot glue or silicone and put a generous amount within the space of the outline. Now, firmly press the foam onto the main structure. For the best results, apply a decent amount of pressure for 5 to 10 seconds. Let's complete this aspect of the build using this procedure for the other pieces. Now, place the cocoa husk mat over top of the foam. We will attach it a little at a time using the same hot glue. Again, you could use silicone for this process, but it doesn't stick to the cocoa husk very well unless you apply pressure for an extended amount of time. So personally, I don't suggest it. Simply put a generous amount of glue on the foam and then press the mat in place for a good 10 seconds. Do this little by little and don't try to do it all at once. Keep doing this until the front of the foam is completely covered by the cocoa husk mat. The benefit to doing a little bit at a time is that we are able to get the mat to conform to the curves of the foam. Now let's trim off the excess cocoa husk mat. Before doing so, make sure that you have enough excess on all of the sides to wrap around the foam. Then put a lot of glue on the sides of the foam and press firmly on it for about 10 to 20 seconds. Do this on the right and left sides of the background. Next, trim off any additional excess and glue down the back flaps using the same methods as before. This next part is totally optional. Get something sharp to make a diagonal hole in the side of the background as seen here. Then get a zip tie and put it in place. You could get away with only using 3 if you want to do this. The only reason that I'm adding these is to further fortify the background. If you do this step, make sure not to pull the zip ties too tight or they will cut through the foam. Now let's attach the rest of the cocoa husk mat to the background. Start by cutting the side pieces so that the mat can easily fold over. You could glue this in place or simply use the zip ties like myself, or even a combination of the two like before. Once you've secured a piece of the mat, snip off all of the corners and zip tie the openings shut. Finally, we'll do the bottom section. You could attach it in place like the top, but I'm just going to cut off the excess. After doing so, make sure to put some zip ties on it as such. You don't really have to be concerned about hiding the zip ties on the bottom, because the background will be concealed by the substrate. And that completes the construction portion of this demonstration. Let's test it out and see how it looks. I'd say that looks pretty nice, and it was extremely easy and cheap to make. We just have to silicone it in place and we're done. Get your silicone and apply a generous amount to the back of the foam. Then place the background into the tank and put something heavy on it to apply pressure while the silicone cures. I'm using 2 10-pound weights. Let the silicone cure for a day and then remove the weight. You've successfully created a naturalistic cocoa husk mat background for your vivarium. The benefits to this background is that plants can root into the background and not just on it like other methods. This background is also a lot less time consuming and much easier to make than other methods. For those of you looking for a cheap and easy background, this is it.